Assalamu alaikum and Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today is the second lecture of week 10 and the topic is analog to digital converter. In the previous lecture we studied a digital to analog converter. So the circuit that we are going to study today is performing a function which is opposite to that of a digital to analog converter. Before we can study the analog to digital converter circuit, we need to study some basic issues. So the first question is why we need analog to digital conversion in the first place. So when it comes to instrumentation, almost every sensor gives analog output. There are very few sensors which give digital output. An example of sensor that gives direct digital output would be the encoders, which are used to measure the angular position of shaft of a motor. But with exceptions like these, all the other sensors give analog output. On the other hand, we have digital circuits like microcontrollers, DSP chips, FPGAs, which offers us powerful signal processing and data analysis capabilities. So in order to take advantage of the computational power of digital circuits, we first need to convert the analog signals provided by the sensors into a digital signals. An example would be an embedded system. So in an embedded system, the core is a digital circuit. It will either be a microcontroller or an FPGA or a DSP chip, but the sensors and actuators, they would require analog signals. So in embedded system, we normally would require ADCs and DSCs. So what are the types of signals that we have? The first one is the analog signal. These are the signals that are normally found in nature. They are continuous both in time and also in their values. That is, their value can change at any time, or alternately we can say that their value changes continuously. And furthermore, this signal can take any value within a given range. In terms of mathematics, we can say that their value is given by a real number. The next type of signal is discrete time signal. There, the values are continuous. That is, the value of signal can be any real number within a given range. That is uh, within a certain maximum and minimum value. But within this maximum and minimum value, the signal normally can take any value. However, the signal can change only after discrete time intervals. That is, we can think of the time axis being divided into time slots. And in case of discrete time signals, The signal can change only at the beginning of a time slot. And the third type is a digital signal. Digital signals are discrete time, and at the same time their values are also discrete. There that that it means that there are only finite values which the signals can take. Or we can say that the signal can take only an integer multiple of a certain real number. So let's see the graphs for each of these three cases to elaborate these definitions further. So here is an example of an analog signal, and you can observe here that the value of the signal is changing continuously, and furthermore the the voltage we can take any value within the given range. That is, the value is not changing in steps, but the values are changing continuously. So this is how an analog signal looks like. You can you can recognize an analog signal by looking at its graph. The graph of an analog signal would be a continuous curve. It will not normally uh, contain steps. The next type of signal is discrete time signals. These signals can change only after a fixed interval of time. That is, they can change only at time t given by integer multiple of the time period of the given signal. Whereas the values are continuous. That is, the value of v or any other quantity represented which the signal represents can take any value, as you can see here. The values can be any real number. However, the value changes only at the beginning of a time slot. The value of a discrete time signal cannot change within a time slot. So the shape of the signal then looks like this. You have either a horizontal line, that is within the time slot, or a vertical line, that is when the value of v changes at the end of the time slot. So here is an example of a digital signal. So as we discussed earlier, digital signals are discrete in time. What does this mean? It means that the value of a digital signal can change only at the beginning of a time slot when we divide the time axis into time slots. Or alternately, we can say that the value of signal changes only at a time instant given by integer multiple of the time period of this signal. So when we have a digital signal, we divide the time axis into time slot, and the width of each time slot is equal to the time period of the digital signal. So a digital signal is characterized by a certain time period, capital T, and after each time period, capital T, the value of the signal may change, but within a time slot That is, when the time is not an integer multiple of the time period, the value of the signal cannot change. So, or we can also say that the value of our digital signal is updated only after the end of a time slot, where the width of the time slot is equal to the time period of the digital signal. In this respect, the digital signal is similar to a discrete time signal. The same holds true for a discrete time signal, which has a certain characteristic time period, and the value of the discrete time signal changes only after integer multiple of time period t. Or we can say that when we divide the time axis into time slots, with each time slot having a width of time period t, then the value of a digital signal and as well as that of a discrete time signal changes only at the beginning of a time slot. So in this respect, a digital signal is similar to a discrete time signal. So where does the difference lies? What is the difference between a discrete time signal and a digital signal? A digital signal has only discrete values, that is, there are only finite number of possible values for a digital signal. Or alternately, we can say that a digital signal can take value only which is an integer multiple of a certain real number k. An example is a binary signal, which can either be 1 or 0. Or when it is in the form of a voltage signal, it is either certain high voltage or a certain low voltage. So the values are discrete, they are not continuous. So this is what characterizes a digital signal, that you only have finite number of possible values for the signal. And here you can see the graph, and the way that you can recognize a digital signal is that the values changes only in steps. Now this property is also there in discrete time signal, but the difference is that if you look carefully at the graph, you would see that all the values are integer multiple of a certain number, that is, you only have finite number of possible values. So in this by looking carefully at the graph, you can determine whether the signal is a discrete time signal or a digital signal. So on the top of the graph you can see that v is equal to nk. The n belong to the set of integer numbers where k is a real number. So k can be any real number within a certain range, but n has to be integer, and the voltage has to be then integer multiple of this real number. So now how does the analog to digital conversion looks like? The analog to digital converter cannot properly convert analog signal directly to a digital signal. What is the reason? Because the ADC will take certain amount of time for the conversion process, whereas an analog signal has the property that its value changes continuously. This means that during the conversion process, the value of the input signal would be changing. So the ADC will not be correctly mapping the analog signal to a digital value. So for this reason, first the analog signal has to be converted into a discrete time signal, which has the property that the value does not change within a given time slot. So first we have a circuit which we call sample and hold circuit. So this circuit samples the input analog signal and then maintains this value at its output till the next sampling instant. So that's why the circuit is called sample and hold. It samples the analog signal and then maintains this value at its output. So the result is that the sample and hold circuit gives an output which is a discrete time signal, and its value correspond to the value of the input analog signal at the beginning of time slot. And then this discrete time signal is converted into a digital signal by the ADC. So let's look at the sample and hold circuit. It can be implemented by a simple circuit like this. You have an op amp voltage forward circuit, and then you have a capacitor at the non-inverting input of the voltage forward circuit. And as we know that in case of voltage forward circuit, we give the input at the non-inverting terminal, whereas the inverting terminal is short circuited to the output. This circuit is connected to the incoming analog signal Vs through a switch, and this switch is controlled by the control circuitry of the ADC. So this switch closes at the beginning of each time slot, that and that it closes repeatedly after each time interval capital T. Now the rate at which this switch closes and samples the input is called the sampling frequency Fs, and this is inverse of the time period Ts, where T subscript S is the sampling time. And this is the circuit that will convert the incoming analog signal to a discrete time signal. So let's see how it works. Initially the Vi, that is the voltage at the input of the voltage forward circuit, is 0. And another point that we can note here is that the Vi is basically the voltage across the capacitor C. So initially we assume that the voltage is 0, there is no charge on the capacitor. Now at t is equal to 0, the switch closes, and when the capacitor charges to its full value, the switch opens again. So the switch closes only for a brief interval of time, which would be around 5 times the charging time constant of the capacitor C. And the charging time constant of the capacitor C would be equal to the Thevenin equivalent resistance of the input signal source Vs multiplied by the capacitance C. So we have to be careful that the switch remains closed for around 5 times the charging time constant of the capacitor, so that Vi becomes approximately equal to Vs. After this, the switch opens again, and the voltage across the capacitor is now equal to Vs at t is equal to 0, which you can see on this slide is written by the equation Vi is equal to Vs of 0. So Vs of 0 means Vs at t is equal to 0. And here is another point, because when we are doing this analysis, we assume this sampling instant, that is the time interval in which the switch remains closed, as much smaller than the total time period Ts. That is, we consider this process to be an instantaneous process. So for this purpose we have to choose the sampling time period carefully. That is, the sampling time period has to be much larger than the charging time constant of the capacitor C. Or alternately, the charging time constant of the capacitor C should be much smaller than the sampling time period Ts. And to make the charging time constant of the capacitor small, we should have the output impedance of the analog signal very small. So if the source that is providing the analog signal has high impedance, we can use a voltage follower with low output impedance to provide the analog signal to the sample and hold circuit. So now the t is greater than 0 and less than sampling time Ts. So we are now in the time slot number 0 and Vi is equal to Vs of 0. Now as the time passes, we reach the time instant when t is equal to Ts. So now switch closes again for a brief moment and the capacitor charges to the current value of Vs, which we can write Vi is equal to Vs of Ts, and the switch opens again. And this process keeps on repeating after every Ts. So let's move further. So as we said earlier, the process repeats after every Ts. So we can now say that for nth time slot, that is when t is between n Ts and n plus 1 into Ts, the Vi will be equal to Vs of n Ts. So now basically you have a discrete time signal within a given time slot. When t is between n Ts and n plus 1 Ts, the Vi remains constant at Vs of n Ts. So now the Vi is a discrete time signal. So here you can see the graphs of Vi and Vs. The blue graph is that for the analog input signal Vs, whereas the red graph uh, is that for the discrete time signal Vi. So you can see that the discrete time signal Vi changes in steps at the beginning of the time slot, whereas it remains constant within a given time slot. And furthermore, its value is equal to the input signal only at the beginning of a given time slot when the input signal is sampled by the sample and hold circuit. And furthermore, the sampling time period is Ts, which is the width of the one time slot, and sampling frequency is then given by inverse of this sampling time period. And the thin green lines that you can see on this plot on this graph are basically boundaries of the time slots. So what are the issues that we have to be careful about when we are sampling an analog signal? So for this purpose we have the Nyquist sampling theorem. That is, the sampling frequency should be more than double of the bandwidth of the input signal. That is, the sampling frequency should be at least 2 times bandwidth of the input signal. So bandwidth is, as you know, maximum frequency minus minimum frequency. So the signal that we typically deal with have minimum frequency equal to 0. That is, the minimum frequency case is the DC signal. So normally the bandwidth is simply the highest frequency in the input signal. So the sampling frequency should be at least 2 times this frequency. Otherwise you will have distortion in the discrete time output that you get from your sample and hold circuit. So how do we solve this problem? The analog signal is first passed through a low pass filter with cutoff frequency equal to no more than half of the sampling frequency of the sample and hold circuit, so that the Nyquist criteria is satisfied. And only after this the signal is fed to the sample and hold circuit. So now once we have done this and we have taken care of the Nyquist criteria, the discrete time signal is fed to the ADC, which converts it into a digital signal. So now here we have a complete diagram. First the input signal passes through a low pass filter, then we have the sample and hold circuit, and then we have the ADC. So ADC basically consists of 3 components: a comparator, which is basically the op-amp B. So we have already studied a comparator. It is simply an op-amp without any feedback circuit, so that the inputs are directly connected to the terminals of the op-amp. Then the output of the comparator goes to the counter. That is, the output of the comparator acts like a clock signal for the counter. So when the output of the comparator is high, the counter runs. When the output of the comparator is low, the counter stops. And then the output of the counter goes to a digital to analog converter, which converts the digital output of the counter into analog voltage. And then this analog voltage goes to the inverting terminal of the comparator. So what is the situation? Initially the counter is at 000 and Vi will have certain positive value. So the comparator output would be positive and counter would be running. As the counter value increments, the output of the digital and analog converter also increases. When the counter is 000, the digital to analog converter will give you 0 volt. And as the counter increments, as the value of the binary number given out by the counter increases, the output of the digital to analog converter will also increase. And this process will keep on going. The counter would keep on running until the output of digital to analog converter becomes higher than Vi. When this happens, we have the situation that the input to the inverting terminal, which is VDAC, which is the output of the digital to analog converter, becomes higher than Vi. So the output of the comparator, which is basically the op-amp B, becomes negative, and when it becomes negative, the counter stops. So now you have the situation that the counter stops when VDAC becomes slightly higher than Vi. So the counter stops only when VDAC becomes slightly higher than Vi, or we can say the counter stops when VDAC when VDAC becomes approximately equal to Vi. So then we have a binary number in the counter which correspond to Vi. So why we say this? Because the output of digital to analog converter is an analog voltage which corresponds to the input binary number given by the counter. Now if this voltage, the output of the digital to analog converter which correspond to its binary input, is approximately equal to Vi, then we can say that the binary number which is given out by the counter correspond to the analog input Vi. So here you can see the circuit of ADC alone. So now we can study the operation of the ADC stepwise. So initially counter is at 000, so VDAC is 0, so VDAC is smaller than Vi. When VDAC is smaller than Vi, the V comparator is high, because this is the property of the comparator. If the input to the non-inverting terminal is higher than the input to the inverting terminal, the op amp would be giving a high output. And when the input to the non-inverting terminal is less than the input to the inverting terminal, the output of the comparator would be low. So now the output is high as VDAC is 0 and Vi is a positive voltage. So another point that we should mention here, that this circuit works only for a positive voltage. So if your analog signal consists of negative values as well, then the solution would be to add a positive offset using a summing amplifier, for example, and then do the ADC uh, conversion, and then you can remove the offset in your digital circuitry uh, in your software. So going back to the ADC operation, so initially VDAC is 0, Vi has a certain positive value, the output of the comparator is high and counter is running. So the counter would increment. So in the next time uh, slot, or in the next time interval, the counter would become 001 and VDAC will have certain positive value. As we know that the output of digital to analog converter is proportional to the input binary number that we studied in the previous lecture. So VDAC will be given by K times M, where K is the constant of proportionality for the digital to analog converter, where M is the value of the binary number stored in the counter. So the process would continue until we reach the time slot where VDAC exceeds Vi. When this happens, now the situation is that the voltage at the inverting terminal, which is VDAC, is larger than the voltage at the non-inverting terminal, which is Vi. So the comparator output becomes low and the counter stops, and this number which is stored in the counter is now the binary output. So this is the basic operation of ADC. We will discuss the operation of ADC with examples in more detail in the interactive section for this week, which would be basically the third lecture for this week, inshallah. And the date and time would be conveyed to you through MS Teams, inshallah. So good luck and Huda Hafiz.